Alright, grubs. I think I'm finally ready to give my final review for the Xu20 V32. I've been playing this a lot for a little over the past week. There's still some stuff I'd like to try, but I don't think I'll keep you waiting any longer. Besides, that stuff is all DS or PSP related, and if you're playing those, you have devices that are going to be better for those. So, let's dig in. Ordering. This is almost always the easiest part, but since I buy my devices with my own money currently, I get to do what a lot of other big reviewers don't. I get to tell you what it's like being a customer. So I placed my order the same way you would with any site. After placing my order, the site wanted me to download an external app for tracking my package. This is my first time ordering through XuRetro, so I hated that I had to download an app. Some of you might also be like cringing in the comments and stuff like that. It's like, it's XuRetro. Actually, the U is lowercase in some of the packaging materials, so this is actually pronounced XuRetro because it's Chinese. But there are too many apps for everything, and once it's arrived, I'll probably just end up deleting this packaging app. Well, not really, because I still need it for when the INEO PAM comes out. This is just why I order through Amazon so much. It's just one app, and I don't mind paying the little bit extra because that little bit extra is probably what I would have ended up paying for shipping anyway. In total, it took 2 weeks from when the order was placed to arrive. That's a long time to wait, but I understand. I waited just as long for the Pocket Go when it first came out. It's coming from China. It's gonna take a while. Once it arrived, the box had a slight dent in it, but the entire thing was wrapped in inches of bubble wrap. That the box is dented tells me that the bubble wrap worked. Had it not been there, it would have been much worse. Everything inside was intact. The packaging itself is very similar to Ambernix, like I'm not even gonna really bother showing you. It's just a cardboard box with a plastic form-fitting bed, a foam insert. Everything came working as intended, no complaints. I like to keep these boxes around so I can use them for storing small stuff. Setup. I ordered this model without the micro SD card. XuRetro is one of the few companies that will let you ask for no card and reduce the price for it. I love this option, and had XuRetro had more devices than just 3, I'd consider ordering from them again. The review models that were sent out had some issues with the software on the card, and were of course bad cards. Brandless garbage. I've had like 3 of these brick on me already. The software issue is that the card came with preloaded Hollow Knight and Balatro. These are indie games and paid software. I get these things are made to play pirated software, but going for modern indie titles just feels a little gross to me. It's not like these are games by Sony or Nintendo. These are everyday dudes like you and me that are getting food taken off of their plate, so I feel a little worse for them. I think Nintendo can probably, deal with losing a few hundred sales. That said, I have bought both of these games previously, and my conscience would be clean had I bought that preloaded card, but I didn't. It's a question of what you find okay. Emulation to me is different. These old games aren't generating revenue for their companies anymore. Should I really continue paying resellers exorbitant amounts of money for used games, or should I emulate? Either way, Nintendo wouldn't see a cent. So it's bad to me to pirate indie games because they're so small time. They're not big companies, and they're easily readily available, and they're always very cheap. When it came in though, I streamed myself getting it set up. All I did was download the firmware from their site. It's called Aurora Launcher, a kind of Android-based custom firmware. It does everything Android can do, but presents it more like you'd expect from an emulator handheld. Not many complaints with it. Once I downloaded it, I used Rufus to flash it all onto my SD card, then plugged the card into the left side slot and powered it on. After all of that, it was ready to go. It was a very easy process, and Rufus makes it safer because Rufus doesn't show my PC hard drives in the list, so I never have to worry about accidentally wiping my PC drives by accident. Who knows when I'll next be drunk driving my PC and flashing SD cards. It doesn't happen that often, but it could. While the process itself was easy, it was also time consuming. A lot of the stream was mostly me panicking, trying to keep everyone entertained while it took longer than I thought it would. Flashing it took a long time, like 30 minutes or so. Adding games. The first slot card is used for holding the operating system. Usually there's some space left afterwards, but I like to keep my games on a second card in the second slot. This is called dual booting. You do this to prevent a loss of saves and games should the first card have an issue. This is really good if you do decide to keep that first bad card that usually comes with these systems. Waste not, want not. Adding games to the second card works the same as any other device once set up. We pop in that card, Android will populate it with a bunch of Android-specific folders like the DCIM file. That's not important though. So you go to the last tab and select Game Library Directory. You'll then choose a card, and it will make a ROMs folder with all of the system files in it. After this, you can pop out the card and put it in your PC. Then drag and drop the files to the matching folders inside of ROMs folder. But this handheld has an OTG port, a second USB-C port at the top that we can use to connect to our computer and transfer data with. This port transfers data, so you plug it in and you can access both of the SD cards without an adapter. Saves a little bit of time. Same process, find the folders, add the games. same as every other handheld. I didn't have to add any BIOS on my own. I don't know if it came with it or I just didn't need them. Didn't bother checking because I haven't had any issues. Power. The Xu20 is a budget handheld, the cheapest that I would still consider being a serious handheld. Many others in the same price point don't even have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, touchscreen, or Android. This device is a bit of an odd duck in that sense. To get all of the features in any other handheld, you normally spend at least $80, but the low power might be making the difference here. This system is mostly comparable to two other similar handhelds, the Trim UI Brick and the RG35XX. I won't talk much on the Brick because I don't actually have it, but the Xu20 does use the same chipset, but runs on Android and has a little bit more RAM, and it has the same general form factor as the RG35XX, just shorter. It has similar power to both of these handhelds as well, meaning it can run PS1 and lower perfectly, with some Dreamcast and N64. Very little Dreamcast and N64. This is pretty standard performance in the $40 to $70 range. Most of the price differences are coming from additional features and different screen sizes. Xu20 uses a 3.2-inch 4:3 aspect ratio screen. My current favorite, the RG Cube XX, uses a 1:1 aspect ratio at 4 inches. This puts them at a similar screen width. When compared to the RG35XX original, the one with no Wi-Fi, this is a direct upgrade in every sense except for the screen size. Against the 35XX's big brother, the 35XX Plus, the Xu20 is near identical, but cheaper by around $10 to $17. There isn't much of a point in going into detail with its performance, as the all-winner is very similar to the H700, which, if you're familiar with these handhelds, the H700 or XX line by Anbernic has been remade over 10 times now. As I said, PS1 is your peak for 60 FPS games. Majority of PSP will be fine, and 64 and Dreamcast is going to have low compatibility. Sonic Adventure 2 gets some dips in City Escape, which will likely only get worse later on. Skies of Arcadia is a slideshow from the very beginning. Android. Why is it outstanding for it to be Android if the chipset and power is the same as some of its Linux peers? Well, Android has been typically reserved almost exclusively for high-end devices in the past, with a few exceptions, like the Magic X040, aka the slice of bread, which is $70-ish bucks. Soon Ioneo is releasing a $70 to $100 Android handheld capable of light PS2 and GameCube, which is available for pre-order now, and the Mingmi Air X for similar, which is sort of a modern PSP as it can't handle anything harder than Dreamcast and N64. But before this past year, it's been above $100 for Android-based handhelds. So this one is very new and weird. So being Android isn't the impressive thing here, so much as it is being Android at this price point. Android is currently the direction this hobby is going in. It's more powerful, more feature-rich, it's just better, except it's a pain for new users. This handheld breaks that norm. This is the friendliest out-of-the-box experience that you can get on an Android handheld, and it's entirely because of the Aurora launcher. It does all of the setup work for you. I only need to log in on retro achievements on all of my apps. It's incredibly similar to a Linux handheld with this launcher, and that was a big surprise for me. I love this launcher for low-powered Android, and hopefully this gets built upon more and becomes an option for more handhelds in the future. It's the best of something like Anbernic's stock OS, but with the options to do everything else that Android can. Android has some great features, even on a weak handheld like this, that makes it perfect for an everyday carry sort of handheld. The main benefit is the sleep function. Anyone buying an Android handheld this cheap only wants sleep or a touchscreen. Most of the other benefits need a bit more power to benefit from it. Like, you can watch YouTube and browse on this, but the tiny screen makes it a bad experience. But that sleep function, ooh baby, that's where it's at. There are numerous times where I left this on sleep overnight while I slept. I'd wake up and go, oops, I didn't mean to leave that on. And the battery would have only gone down by like 3%. This makes it perfect for gaming on the go. You only need to tap the power button and Betty by Time for Game Boy. When you want to get back in, you just tap it again. People say the Brick has a similarly good sleep function despite being Linux. From what I've heard, it uses save states, I think. I don't know for sure, so don't quote me on that. Same with Garlic OS on other handhelds. I do have experience with that. I know that one does use save states. I play retro achievements on hardcore, so I can't use save states, which means the save state style sleep function just won't work for me. Linux sleep is okay, but it does consume power, more so than Android. A Linux handheld can sleep for a few days, the Xu20 sleeps for at least a week. When playing GBA, not being able to use save states is fine. There are plenty of saves, saves, auto saves, and you can save wherever you want usually. But home consoles are a little more stingy with the saves. This lack of serious sleep function has been what's been keeping me from playing stuff like PS1 and other systems. While I'm not going out very often, I am a very busy person and I may have to drop it at a moment's notice. I also have ADHD and might forget to just go back to it before my game dies. The touchscreen is alright, it's useful for going through menus and stuff like that, but doesn't work with the game launcher menus. But since these handhelds can all play DS, having touch can have its uses, albeit to a limited extent due to being a single screen. Battery. It lasts about 5 hours on GBA with performance mode on. You can change the CPU power to use less or more CPU, and that will save you some battery power. At first I used low power mode with the GBA, but then WarioWare started giving me some issues, so I've gone back to performance mode for everything. But earlier systems or RPGs are fine on low power. Either way, 5 hours is pretty good, and some of that time was spent sleeping. Logging this info was very easy too, since the system logs how long the screen has been on since its last full charge, so the measurements are pretty spot on. I'm not playing for more than 5 hours a day, so this is fine with me. The charger is USB-C to A, which does blow. So use an old USB-A brick or it won't charge, or you can use a Switch 2 or similar charger with a variable charge rate. See, the interesting thing about the Switch 2 is that it has multiple charging speed modes. When docked and sleeping, it's at full speed. When docked, it's on lower speed. When charging through the top port, it's full speed. So the Switch 2 cord automatically adjusts its output. I've been using it with everything. It's an expensive cord though, $30, but it did come with my Switch 2, and we bought an extra one when we got the Steam Deck, because the cord that came with it was a little damaged. Form factor. This form factor is most similar to the RG35XX. It has a general Game Boy-like shape to it. It's a little wider, and a little shorter, and a little thicker. From the front, it looks nearly the same except for the analog switcher button. More on that later. The back, though, is where they differ the most. The RG35XX is known for being pretty uncomfortable in the pocket. It's because of this sharp shelf where the shoulder buttons come out and taper back into the handheld. So it has this sort of spike to it, causing pain if it's in your thigh, or a weird bulge if it's, facing away from your thigh. The back of the device has a shelf, but it goes down consistently to the bottom of the device with no tapering. Someone on Reddit was actually excited when I told them this, which is just kind of funny. I didn't realize it was that big of a problem. Being smaller and having this better booty is what makes it a much better pocket fit. Oh yeah, front-firing speaker, but it's mono. At least it's in the middle though, so you aren't muffling it with your hand. I also love the colors that are available, especially how they change color in the light. My purple ranges from a deep grape to something like a berry color or like a pinkish color under certain lights. Pocket. It will fit in most pockets. Skinny jeans will be a tight fit, but women's half pockets won't happen. Thankfully, it's such a cheap handheld that I feel no remorse raw dogging it in a bag. D-pad. If your handheld doesn't have an analog stick, then your system is made or undone by its D-pad. It's an average-sized, single-unit, plus-shaped D-pad with rounded corners. The D-pad is pretty stiff though, and perhaps it needs to be broken in first. While playing Legacy of Goku 1, it's terrible by the way, the game is, it has a lot of D-pad movement, and I felt strain in my wrists while playing it with this handheld. But while playing Pokemon, it was perfectly fine. I found the rolling process of the D-pad to be a little more difficult than on some of my other handhelds. Maybe I'm just being pampered by that disc D-pad. My opinion is though, if you're not going to have an analog stick, you need to heavily consider using a floating disc D-pad like the Genesis or the RG Cube XX. You might be grimacing, but trust me, this D-pad fucks. In the end, it works. This stiffness helps prevent accidental input, so it's got a silver lining. Base buttons. The backseat buttons, as I like to call them, they're what you'd expect. Well-sized, hard, well-spaced. But they're pretty clicky, but quiet. I think based on these and the D-pad, they chose to use very stiff rubbers. They can be broken in, but it's up to you whether you want a device that has those in the first place that even needs breaking in. You can buy a device that has better rubbers that won't require breaking in. The controls are comfortable enough, and if you start your Xu20 off with a bunch of Pokemon, then it'll be broken in before your next game. You might also be able to find replacement rubbers, and it's an easy swap, but honestly, for this cheap of a price, you don't want to have to make any modifications to it. Other buttons. Select and start are perfect. All of the buttons besides the shoulders are on the quieter side, but not silent. The shoulders are a little louder, but they're not a bad sound. I actually kind of like it. It's kind of like ASMR for me. Volume button is what you'd expect, and the menu button is on the right side, so it's a little harder to reach. Shortcuts. The G button on the right is the menu button and manages some of the Android-associated shortcuts. Tap G to bring up RetroArch or emulator menu, long press to force close the current app. G plus L2 opens up the app manager, which lets you close suspended apps. G and R2 does the same as swiping down from the top. Select plus volume sets brightness, and long power press opens the power menu. These are all fine and sensical. I like that there isn't a ton to remember like some handhelds. the unique features. The power button. It might seem weird that one of the coolest features of the Xu20 is something so simple as a power button. Like, you'd think with how long electronics have existed that we would have discovered the best power button already, but XuRetro has reinvented the wheel, but like in a good way. They reinvented the wheel and actually found a way to make it better in some ways. That's supposed to be impossible. Typically your button is on the edge for a handheld, usually at the top or right side. XuRetro put it on the back at the top left. It makes the Xu20 look so futuristic. It also stands out. It's just so weird, and anyone I told about it where this power button was, they said that's a weird place to put the power button, but they ended up liking it. Lots of phones have their power buttons on the back already, so it's not that weird on phones. This is usually through the fingerprint reader though. I think the next Xu device needs to do this back power button, but have it sit flush instead of raised. I never accidentally hit the power button while playing. It's not near your finger and it doesn't press too easily. You can turn it on intentionally very easily, but accidentally might be harder due to the shape of the handheld. By having a large booty, very Game Boy Color-like in a way, it won't ever rest flat in the pocket. This gives it some space in the pocket. Although it did occasionally turn on when sliding it into my pocket, but you can enable the lock screen to prevent accidental waking. Analog switcher. The Xu20 has so many awesome buttons. Alone, the unique power button is cool, but as you've noticed, there isn't any analog sticks. Usually the remedy to this ailment is to have a hotkey to switch D-pad movement to analog movement. This is usually one of the existing hotkey buttons, a combo. Sometimes it's the power button. I really don't like when it's the power button. On the front of the Xu20 though, we have a button that sits flush with the shell. If you press it, it'll turn the D-pad into analog input. Now obviously, I'd rather have an analog stick, but when you're looking for portability or everyday carry, you might not want analog sticks. It'll make the handheld thicker, and being in your pocket, it would damage the sticks. If your handheld has potentiometer sticks, like the Switch, then drift would kick in super fast from being used in your pocket all the time. I think the majority of people getting budget handhelds are people wanting pixel-based games and, well, Pokemon. It's Pokemon. They all want it for Pokemon. I got a budget handheld for Pokemon, you probably did too, so not having an analog stick doesn't really kill this for me, but having the switcher here makes analog games at least possible. It's a concession you can make if you choose to. Being in this price range of 40 to 50 bucks means you have to make concessions. Surprisingly though, we don't have to make many. Usually these concessions are the lack of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, touchscreen, and analog sticks, and the Xu20 is only missing half of one of those things. That's a big win at this price point. This does have some issues though. Using the D-pad for analog movement means you're only getting 8-axis movement. Your standard up, down, left, right, and then the signal diagonals between them. So these diagonals are only going to be 45-degree angles. For games like Sonic Adventure 2, which is playable here, you're only going to be able to get Sonic to move in 8 directions and the diagonals will be way too rigid. I don't recommend this for anything on N64 or Dreamcast of course, but PSP is fine with the switcher. On budget handhelds that have analog sticks, we often have a cardinal snapping issue. This is where when rotating the stick, it tends to heavily prefer up, down, left, right, and the diagonals. It does not like to go in between the diagonals and the main 4 directions. So if it had analog sticks, this one would probably have the same issue, unless you used custom firmware to fix it. I don't think analog sticks are necessary on this handheld because it doesn't play games that would use them very well. I'd still like it to have even just one stick, but this works fine, just fine. This button, however, is very cool. It's very futuristic looking, like the power button placement too. The flush button makes for a very neat and advanced feeling design when paired with the transparent shell and lights beneath it. It's a very clean looking design, with no weird looking buttons. XuRetro really nailed the overall design on this one, I think. Touchscreen. It has one. It's also oleophobic. I know, in 2025, aren't they worried they'll get canceled? Oleophobic means that it's harder to fingerprint and smudge. Not impossible, but harder. I love this because it's easier to clean and I won't have to see comments about how I must have Cheeto fingers. This screen does have some other issues that you probably noticed though, like the massive bezels. I measured the size of the screen including the bezels with it, and it measures 4 inches diagonal. I think they made this with a 4-inch screen in mind, but it would fit a little too snugly. That or they wanted a 3.5-inch screen, but for some reason that wasn't doable, so they chose a 3.2 with those big bezels. It's fine, it works, and it doesn't really bother me that much, but I feel like even they wanted it to be a little bigger. It's just this is what they had to deal with. The screen brightness can be an issue too. While it gets pretty bright, it doesn't get very dim. I tend to record with my brightness as low as possible, as these screens can appear to be brighter on a recording, but you can tell with the bright fog around the screen, it doesn't get truly dark. I think it might be too bright for bedtime play with your partner next to you. Also, I don't know the exact brightness measure, but I don't think this will be fighting glare or direct sunlight. Usually if the brightness is listed, they think it's bright enough to be brag-worthy. They do not make mention of it. Games. Alright, finally onto the part that people care about. Being a 4.3, this handheld is primarily intended for things like NES, SNES, Sega systems, and PS1. All of those work great. Game Boy Advance has minimal letterboxing, so it's a good fit too. I think this could be a Pokemon handheld for most people. I played Legacy of Goku 1, Pokemon Recharged Yellow, Symphony of the Night on PS1, and a little bit of Legend of the Dragoon on PS1. I think mobile systems and SNES are great here, but playing PS1 didn't feel as good. It felt too small. Characters and environments in Dragoon were just microscopic, so I dropped that one pretty quick. It's suitable, it'll work for most people, I imagine, but I felt like the screen was small enough that I felt like I was missing out. It's not even that much smaller than the RG35XX, but I wasn't playing PS1 games on that either. When it came to GB, GBC, NES, and SNES, I felt that all of those experiences are better on the RG Cube XX. Don't get me wrong, I'm still going to play Chrono Trigger on the Xu20 later, but when playing the native resolution for SNES and NES, I think you're better off with the RP Classic or the RG Cube XX. I just don't know if I can justify spending double or more on those when this is just as good. If it were 4.3 versus 4.3, the Xu20 is barely smaller, like a centimeter or less. But when it's 8.7 versus 8.7, the Cube XX and RP Classic are coming out on top, no question. The Cube especially with its large screen. If they made the Xu20 screen just a little taller, this could have been the poor man's Pocket Classic. Unfortunate that they didn't. I think with all the quirks that it has, having an 8.7 screen would be a really interesting selling point for it. If you're buying budget to the tune of sub 50, this is probably your first handheld. I think this is a great first handheld for you. You could definitely do worse. It does everything the RG35XX Plus does, but cheaper, and has the analog switcher. The Plus does not. Not a dedicated button for it, at least. It might have some sort of input. Mine's the original, so I don't know. Some systems I just didn't even bother testing. If you want PSP and you want it big, clean, and smooth, this is not the system for it. The Mingme Air X is. It'll run fine on the Xu20, but it's super small. Shortly after getting the Xu20, the RGDS was announced, and so if you want DS original, then nothing is going to top an actual dual screen device. Dreamcast and N64 are going to be better on analog stick handhelds, and if you want those perfect, you shouldn't buy Linux or Android this cheap. The iNeo Pocket Air Mini is going to be better for those. PS1 runs perfect on a toaster, but if you want Spyro, Crash, or Ape Escape, you're going to need analog sticks. In that case, I recommend the RG40 XXH. This is perfect for most things though. Like if you just want to play Pokemon and ROM hacks, this is the budget machine for that. I can also play sort of one-handed. If you have larger hands, you can one-hand it easily. You just need to do that pinky grip thing like with your phone. It's not as one-handed friendly as the Miu Mini is, or the Miu Mini Flip now, but it's possible. I definitely want a Miu Mini Flip, but I am so scared of hinges right now, especially after what Miu did with the first ones. RPGs in general though are going to excel on here, especially with the sleep-wake function. It's going to be super convenient when you're in between save points. Gripes. This is just a general unorganized section of me whining. These are really just small nitpicks. These might be huge for you, so I included them anyway. Just let me know if any of these like stand out as like things to really look out for, and I'll make sure to include them in future reviews. The power button on the back is cool, but the power light being back there doesn't really serve a purpose. If I'm looking at the front of the device, I can't see the power light. No accelerometer on this, so you still need an at least $80 device just to play WarioWare Twisted and Kirby's Tilt and Tumble. Logging into retro achievements on DuckStation doesn't work since its window doesn't let you see the confirm button because the screen is too short and can't be rotated. It's not that big of a deal. There are RetroArch cores that play PS1 just fine, and then that way you don't have to worry about the login issue. Folders don't work in the games menu, so I have to bring the games into the ROM folder, raw dog style, which makes organization a pain. This means turning multi-track files like those on a PS1 a nightmare to organize, so you have to turn your PS1 files into CHDs just to keep sane. Even then, if you have a bunch of multi-disc PS1 games like Final Fantasy, then you'll have to have a file for each disc on the screen, easily tripling or quadrupling some entry names. No retro achievement icons next to the games. Backshelf should be taller so the bumpers are where your fingers naturally rest, otherwise I have to do a little bit of a pinky grip at times. Long boot time of 37 seconds. This one is legit just me whining because you'll never turn it off fully. I've been keeping it on sleep ever since I got it. Sometimes the game selection list doesn't work right. It's a very rare issue. I've only had it happen once. I don't even have a video of it, but when you cycle through, the scroll will mess up and get hung up on some games. I fixed it with a restart, but if this happens, it just won't let you scroll. Search function straight up doesn't work at times. It gets a little warm, but that's normal. Still hotter than you'd expect, and if you're paranoid about that kind of thing, it's a little scary. Do I recommend it? While many of the core features of Android are missing or poorly developed here, I do think it's a better version of the 35XX. Those Android functions not working the best is more just a limitation of the power of the handheld. If you want Android sleep and you're afraid of fully featured Android, this is a breeze to set up. If you ever set up a CFW like MuOS or Noli, you can do this easily. If you buy it with the card, it's pre-set up, but those default cards do tend to suck. This is something you're going to have to learn how to do eventually. I'd save the $5 and buy a double pack for $8 at Walmart from a good brand, like On or SanDisk or something, or PNY. I think this is perfect for people new to this stuff. Seriously, the Aurora launcher is so similar to Linux handhelds, there's barely any setup. It's pretty much out of the box like Linux handhelds. Aurora is bridging the gap between these two. It's like near identical. This is my new budget recommendation, honestly, if you can stand the wait. Since it can't handle higher Android functions, you don't need to worry about being overwhelmed or distracted. You're not installing Blue Sky or Twitter on this. The screen is way too short for that. So I definitely think this is a good one for newbie moles. You can't beat this price for the features that it offers. If you're a big Pokemon head and just want to play pre-DS Pokemon and ROM hacks, then this is perfect. Moles with big hands will find that this is a good one-handed system for Pokemon. Personally, this made me want to play Pokemon again, and I have been. I was playing it, and I swore I was done with Pokemon, then I downloaded Pokemon Recharged Yellow, and now I'm playing a hard mode Nuzlocke. Those who are just people wanting to play old games again and want a wide variety, this is a great option. Just keep in mind that if you're wanting primarily PS1, PSP, Prior, and arcade games, know that those will work, but they might not be ideal because of the screen size. DS isn't really worth considering when the RGDS is on the horizon, and it'll be a budget console too. They already confirmed it's under $100, but, well, let's wait and see how under $100 it is. If you want N64 or Dreamcast, a sub-70 handheld just isn't going to do it. Besides, you're going to need an analog stick for those. Am I going to keep using it? I really like my RG Cube XX, and I do think it's better in many ways. The Xu20 is better in just as many other ways on its own, too. I think these two can coexist in my life, but I really like the pick up and play and the speed of the Xu20 more. The sleep function is just too good to ignore. I can instantly be in my game and earning retro achievements. This is going to be my EDC for quite a while. Everyday carry, by the way. But I'm getting the Ioneo PAM, and I'm also pretty excited for that, and that is also Android. I'm a busy person, but I don't leave home much, so pocketability isn't really a concern for me. I also bring a bag everywhere I go. Android isn't noob friendly, but it is the future, as far as I can tell. The XuRetro is incredibly noob friendly, so maybe this might change everything though. This might be the bridge between those two worlds. Maybe not with this handheld, but if refined, maybe by another company, we could have a new budget king. This space is constantly changing, and as a YouTuber, my EDC is going to change a lot more than yours. Out of what I have, the Nano, 28XX, 35XX, Cube XX, RP3+, Steam Deck, Switch 2, PSP, PS Vita, GBA, SP, BBC, the Xu20 is going to be what I play the most because of that instant gameplay advantage. No bullcrap, just games. If you enjoyed this review, thank you for watching. It was incredibly long. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing really long ones like this. It takes a lot out of me to read the entire script and write this whole thing. So yeah, I hope you liked it. If you did, don't forget to tip your mole. I take likes, subscribes, and bug emojis. And I'll see you all later. Bye.